أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. To commence with this afternoon's program, I'd like to call Maulana Arafat to come and read a short dua. We are so fortunate that we don't have to go to Arafat. Arafat is coming to us. Maulana Arafat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah Maulana Arafat, beautiful rendition of Surah Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas. Is the cameraman in your way? Do you think you want us to move the podium? Or is it okay with you guys? Can you guys see? Okay, that's fine. So on behalf of the Pretoria Women's United, the Pakistan-South Africa Association, the Imam Al-Ghazali Global Relief, South African Friends of Palestine and the Holocaust Committee and others, a sincere welcome to Clive Stafford Smith, who, as you know, is representing our dear sister, Dr. Aafia Siddiqui. And also a bonus for this particular gathering, we have with us Muazzam Beg. He heads the Cage Foundation. And of course, the Salam Media team, Ponti, Inayat, and the others who have made this particular tour of Clive possible. And as you know, that this is also a fundraiser. Why? Because Clive needs to represent Aafia, and you need funding to do that. You need to spend money. So we are hoping that you guys are going to dig into your pockets. I don't know how the women do it. I don't know where you keep your funds. But please, after the event, and there's some organizations represented here, pledge your funds. It's very, very important. And do network to try and accumulate more funds. And all the funds will go through Salam Media. But this is a very, very important task that we have for you with regards to this particular event. Now, the life story of our dear sister, Aafia Siddiqui, I mean, it's been going on for over 20 years, believe you me. And this is indeed a tragedy. Not only for Aafia and her immediate family and friends and extended family, but I think for this ummah. Why? Because we have this, I don't know about you, we have this feeling of shame, of total helplessness. And this permeates into our very existence and belief system. To think that one of our brightest, this is really, it's tragic, one of our brightest, most respected, courageous sisters languishes in a US prison, a criminal US prison system, sold into bondage by our very own for a few dollars more. That's a sad indictment, believe me, for this ummah, and it exposes the decay in our so-called Muslim leadership. Now, our sister Aafia Siddiqui represents much more than herself. As you know, she is a Hafiz al-Quran, and abundantly gifted, a PhD in neuroscience. What does this tell you? A prime example of a woman under the banner of Islam. Filled with potential, speaking truth to power. That was a crime. Challenging the status quo, challenging the corrupt governments, notably in this particular case, the criminal Musharraf at that time and his henchmen. And what did they do? They became bounty hunters. They were getting millions. So they considered her a threat and painted her as a threat to Western hegemony. That is why they kidnapped her and she disappeared without trace. And this you're going to hear going down the line with Clive, and Muazzam will also allude to that. Now, this was a crime. That she was a woman amongst women, a leader. And they found that threatening because it upsets the status quo. Muslim women are supposed to be in parda, in the kitchen, not being educated. That's the narrative that's out there. She challenged that narrative. And here we have, 20 years down the line, these brave people. They're not going to give up until we bring her to South Africa. Am I right, Clive? Until. Of course, the fight goes on. The challenge is there. Because they're not going to give up, so we're not going to give up. That's how it works. You have to speak truth to power. You have to challenge the criminal elements. And we know, nobody needs to tell you about the hypocrisy, double standards of the US. Nobody needs to tell you that. If you don't know by now, you're living in, I don't know, cloud cuckoo land or something. But nevertheless, let me ask Brother Nasir, who happens to be the president of the Pakistan-South Africa Association, to give you a message of support for Aafia Siddiqui and the struggle that continues. Brother Nasir?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, respected elders, honored guests and dear friends, good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Pakistan South Africa Association, behalf of Pakistani community, behalf of Pakistani business community, we want to stand here today in unity, purpose and unwavering solidarity with God. We gather not only to raise awareness, but to raise our voice for justice, compensation, and human dignity. Today we pledge our support for Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, a daughter of the Muslim world, a mother, a sister, a symbol of resilience. For years, her name has echoed across a border as a reminder that justice delayed is justice denied. Regardless of politics, nationality, or ideology, her case speaks, speaks to a universal principle that every human being deserves fairness, dignity, and the right of the heard. Our presence here today in a message that South Africa, Pakistan, Pakistani's community, alongside our brothers and sisters, all of our backgrounds, refuse to forget. We refuse to allow silence to replace conscience. We believe peaceful advocacy, lawful engagement, and persistent prayers, trusting that truth and justice will ultimately prevail. Let the gathering strengthen our collective resolve. Let inspire conversation in our home, our mosque, our community halls, and our hearts. And let it remain those in positions of power that the world is watching, and the compensation must never be overshadowed by indifference. To Dr. Aafia Siddiqui and her family, you are not alone. To all those working tirelessly for her freedom, we stand with you. And to everyone gathered here today, thank you for being the voice of those who cannot speak freely to themselves. May justice prevail, may peace endure, and may our unity remain strong. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Clive Smith, for your all efforts. We really appreciate, and we want you to keep it up. And as our Pakistan South Africa Association, our community, we are going to stand with you whenever you need any kind of assistance. We are around and we are available. Thank you very much, Program Director, giving me this chance.
Jazakallah, Nasir, for those encouraging words. And now I would like to call Mariam to come up and speak on behalf of, or give a message of solidarity for the Pretoria Women's United.
Assalamu alaikum. Pretoria Women United stands in solidarity with Dr. Aafia Siddiqui and her family. As women committed to justice, dignity, and the protection of human rights, we are deeply concerned about the prolonged suffering, separation, and hardship endured by Dr. Aafia. Regardless of politics, borders, or beliefs, every woman deserves humane treatment, fairness, and compassion. We join voices across the world calling for transparency, mercy, and the upholding of fundamental human rights. The pain of a woman is never hers alone. It is carried by families, communities, and generations. As women of conscience, we cannot remain silent in the face of suffering. Pretoria Women United believes in justice that heals, not justice that harms. In accountability that is guided by humanity, and in a world where women are protected, not forgotten. Our thoughts and prayers are with Dr. Aafia Siddiqui and all women who endure injustice in silence. We stand for dignity, compassion, and hope. We do this in justice, humanity, and solidarity. Jazakallah.
Thank you, Mariam. Our first speaker is Muazzam Beg, and if you don't know already, tent in which he recounts his experience where he underwent torture and abuse in Guantanamo Bay, Kandahar, and Bagram. You're going to hear from him where he underwent this experience by the so-called civilized world, the Western world. He's also listed as one of in the Muslim 500 list, one of the most influential Muslims, 500 Muslims around the world. He's in that list. So I think you're still considered a danger to I think you're not safe, Muazzam, because you'll be influencing a lot of people. And of course, his function now is to travel the length and breadth of this beautiful world of ours, investigating abuses and torture. And we know a lot of things have happened in Syria, happening still in Egypt, Libya. And this is his function now, traveling, investigating, exposing, and challenging. So without wasting more of your time, Muazzam Beg.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Oh Allah, nothing is easy except that which you make easy, and you make the difficult easy if you so wish. My dear brothers, sisters, and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's my pleasure and honor to be addressing you here this afternoon. I pray Allah makes this gathering one that is of benefit for us on the day when we require that benefit to be manifest. I want to start by telling you a little story, and that is through Facebook. Once, it was around 2010 or so, I get a message, a private message from somebody who has as the image on Facebook a woman in a hijab. And she says, Assalamu alaikum. I say, Wa alaikum assalam. She said, brother, were you in Guantanamo? I said, yes, I was. She says, so was I. And I paused for a moment and thought, and then wrote, but sister, there were no prisoners, no female prisoners in Guantanamo. She said, I wasn't a prisoner, I was one of your guards. And I said, you're a Muslim? She said, I became a Muslim. And I said, why? She said, because this was the first time in my life I had encountered Muslims. And as a soldier, they had taken us as new recruits to ground zero, where the Twin Towers had fallen. And we were told and indoctrinated by the American military that the people you're going to guard are the most dangerous people on the planet. And what drives them is their faith in Islam. And so when I came here, I had my guard up. But then I saw the interactions between yourselves and with us. And by the time I left Guantanamo, I didn't hate Islam, I loved it. And I promised myself that once I get the opportunity for independent research, I will learn about this faith, and I did, and I embraced Islam as a result. Please send my salam to the brothers remaining in Guantanamo. And I wanted to begin with that because there were no female prisoners in Guantanamo, but there were female prisoners in Bagram. And I was held in Bagram in the prison there at the airbase run by the Americans for 1 year before I even got to Guantanamo. And in Bagram, in 2002, in May in particular, I was being interrogated by the CIA and the FBI and a whole host of American alphabet agencies. And in order to try to break my will, what they thought that they could, they tied me up. They tied my hands behind my back to my legs and put me in a cell, a room, small little room, for a month. And during that time, amongst the things they subjected me to was the sounds of a woman screaming. Now, this wasn't the ordinary kind of screams of laughter or joy, or this were blood-curdling screams that echoed throughout the whole of the prison. Because you see, in Bagram, conversations were not allowed. You weren't allowed to talk to another prisoner. If you did, you'd be unceremoniously taken to the front of the cage and your hands tied above the top of the cage to your head and being suspended to the point at which all the weight is on your wrists. And so talking was not allowed. And every sound was extremely pronounced. Every sound, every decibel reached you. And nothing was more potent than the sounds of a woman screaming, because up until that point, nobody knew that there were any women in Bagram. Eventually, after being in Bagram for a year and then being transferred to Guantanamo, and then after Guantanamo coming back home, I started to look at what was that voice and who was that voice. And I came across the name Aafia Siddiqui. The Chibia woman had been disappeared. However, it happened in 2003, not 2002 when I was there. Meaning it couldn't have been Aafia Siddiqui unless somebody's got their dates terribly wrong. But it was somebody's wife. It was somebody's daughter. It was somebody's sister. It was somebody's aunt. There was a woman there. And what I learned, of course, afterwards is that there was a woman, not just taken to Bagram later, but actually a multitude of nations took part in the abuse of, in her abuse, and by extension, the abuse of her children, Suleiman, Maryam, and Ahmed. You're going to hear a lot more about them in terms of what happened to them. But suffice to say this: we as men, and what we endured in Guantanamo, so you're still aware, is still open. There are still 15 prisoners there, and the most prominent of them is a Palestinian stateless prisoner who has been compensated for the role of 4 European nations in his torture. So he's won 4 cases, and he remains in prison without charge or trial. A stateless Palestinian, if you want to understand the connection to and the abuse of the Palestinians that goes way back before October the 7th, look no further than Palestine. You will find case after case after case of the abuse of Palestinians. But we as men could endure certain amounts of physical torture, psychological torture, religious abuse. One of the things that Aafia talks about often is about the religious abuse and how that becomes in and of itself a tool to try to break you. Let's say they can't hurt you physically. Let's say they can't get to you through the sounds of a woman screaming that you might believe is your wife being tortured, as they did to me. But then they bring the Quran. And whilst the soldier may think this is just paper and ink, to the Muslim, regardless of whatever school of thought he follows, this is the unadulterated, pure speech of Allah, God. And if you desecrate that, if you spit on that, if you urinate on that, if you stamp on that, if you write curse words on that, then you have broken my soul and earned my animosity. And that was happening in the early days in Bagram. It happened in Guantanamo. And Aafia has witnessed it too. And the reason I know this is because I was handed over. So the Pakistani police and ISI, and not the police, the ISI and the CIA. On the night of the 31st of January 2002, they came to my house in Islamabad, where I had taken up residence after evacuating from Afghanistan, where I had lived with my wife and children. My wife was Palestinian at the time, and we were working on a project to build schools for girls in Taliban-administered Afghanistan. So when they knocked on my door in the middle of the night, they stormed in, no identification, no uniforms, and put a gun to my head, threw me to the floor, tied my hands behind my back, tied my legs together, and put a hood over my head, and went into the room where my wife and children were asleep, and then they took me into the back of the vehicle. In the vehicle, they lifted the hood, and there's 2 CIA agents in the front wearing shalwar qameez. They weren't fooling anybody. But they said, you either answer our questions here or answer them in Guantanamo. And when this process happened, as I said, we'd gone through all of that. I eventually returned to Pakistan in 2010. And this time when I came with, some of you may know her, Yvonne Ridley, and some other people. And this time I wasn't unceremoniously taken away and beaten, stripped, and tortured. This time round, I was welcomed at the airport by Sister Fawzia Siddiqui and her other family members, including Ahmed, who now, at that time, had been disappeared by the Americans for 6 years, was now free. And this time, I was talking to the Pakistanis about what had happened. And this time, I went to Aafia Siddiqui's house, and I met with her mother, Ismat. She's passed away now. May Allah grant her Jannat al-Firdaus al-A'la and forgive her sins. But the case of Aafia Siddiqui hadn't even, it got massive momentum, but it hadn't got someone that had really grabbed the case, really taken the bull by the horns and said, I'm going to hold this case and I'm not going to let it go. And that, for me, is the connection that goes back to Guantanamo. It goes back to a time when I was held in solitary confinement. When I say solitary confinement, I mean you have no access to any other human being at all, not even for a Muslim Friday prayers or any prayers. No other human being other than the soldiers and the guards that you see, except for in the summer of 2004, I think it was the summer, a man is introduced to me by way of letter. And so I receive a letter through other lawyers, and the letter says, you are in good hands, because now lawyers have been, for the first time in 2.5 years, given access to the prisoners in Guantanamo, not because they're going to court, but because they will be able to challenge their detention somehow in the American courts. And this lawyer has been working on death row cases for the past 20 years in America. And when I saw that, I thought, why would I've never been charged with a crime, why would I need a death row lawyer? So I thought, excuse the pun, but I thought I'm screwed. And then eventually, this man walks through and comes into my maximum security isolation cell where I've been for 2.5, or I've been for around 2.5 years in total. And he brings a ream of documents. He's already been preparing. He's studied law of his life and defended all sorts of people accused of murder. But he hasn't dealt with this one before. He's never seen anything like this. He never studied this in law school. He never studied this in law school. And so he comes along, and he uses the legal term. He takes the ream of documents, and he slams them on the floor, on the table. He said, Mozam, this crap is not going to work. We have to embarrass these, excuse my language, bastards. And that was the legal framework of how do you get people out of Guantanamo. And one of the things that I told Clive when I was there was my experience in Bagram. I told him in detail, painstaking detail. And so he writes a document. What is 1,000 days of torture? 1,000 days of torture, Muazzam Beg. And so time goes on. Eventually, the long story short, I get released, and other people get released, and Guantanamo slowly, over 2 decades, out of 779 prisoners, there's only 15 left. And Clive represented around 87 of them, including me, the first. But that's not the almost unbelievable part of the story. Because who could have imagined? Last year, or was it the year before? The year before was last. So Afghanistan, the wheels of fortune change. Afghanistan now falls back to the hands of the very people that ran it. And those people who were in prison And so, as a result of that, we are able to go to Afghanistan, and I go back where? Where do I go back to? I go back to Bagram, the place where I saw 2 prisoners murdered, beaten with their hands tied above their heads to the top of the cage, being punched and kicked to the point they were killed. And the report said that they found it amusing that the prisoner, because he was shouting Allah, Allah, every time he was punched and kicked, they found it amusing, so they did it over 200 times. So I'm back in this place, and I'm making a film with Al Jazeera. And we try to make a focus to release the last prisoner in Guantanamo who's from Afghanistan. And then I return again, this time with Clive. And we're walking the streets of a house where I used to live, the streets where we used to have the school. And most importantly, this time we don't go back for me. This time we go for Aafia. This time we want to know what happened to Aafia Siddiqui, the real story, not the made-up lies, fabricated stories put up about her. What we want now is eyewitnesses. As they say in Arabic, shuhud al-ayan, people who saw with their eyes, people who witnessed, who heard, who saw, who smelt, who felt. And this time round, we get one after the other after the other. It's like a tidal wave of eyewitnesses wherever we go. Cooperation wherever we go. And an understanding that regardless of whatever issues there may be between this country and that country, that this woman has been terribly, terribly, terribly wronged. And I'm just going to finish on this because it's extremely important to say this as a community here in South Africa. Mostly, where you go, say in Britain, in the United States of America, in Canada, obviously Pakistan, Afghanistan to some degree, that wherever there's a diaspora Pakistani community, you will naturally find people coming to the assistance and being concerned about the case of Aafia Siddiqui. South Africa, in my view, has always been different. There isn't a huge Pakistani community here, but the South Africans themselves, especially from the Muslim community, have been talking about this from day one and have been involved and concerned from day one. And if you were to go to other parts of the world, not that they don't know about her, but in some places in the Muslim world, they have no clue. They may have heard the name once and forgotten about it. You could go to many countries and that would be the case without naming any of them. And that's why I want to say with South Africa, it gives us a particular sense of hope that here in this country, because of what you've gone through yourself and a recognition of the not just injustice, but actually, arguably the most famous South African ever was somebody who was imprisoned for 27 years. Not because he was a criminal, but because he was criminalized. And so, inshallah, I want to end with that, and that's my introduction to Clive Stafford Smith, who has been my friend, my lawyer, and most importantly, my partner in crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Muazzam. Crime in inverted commas. Before I ask Inayat to come up and introduce Clive, Muskan has a letter from Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui, and she wants to read it out to you.
Assalamu alaikum. I stand before you today with a message from Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui, Aafia Siddiqui's sister. Dear people of South Africa, as we stand together in the pursuit of justice, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for standing with us in the fight for Aafia's freedom. I am grateful for Salam Media for this initiative. Dear brothers and sisters, your unwavering support, your voices, and your solidarity have been a beacon of hope for our family and for the Aafia movement. From the streets of Johannesburg to the halls of Cape Town, your protests, your letters, and your advocacy have kept Aafia's case alive. You have shown the world that the people of South Africa will not turn a blind eye to injustice, no matter where it occurs. As Aafia's sister, I am overwhelmed with your gratitude. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for your love and support. Your passion has inspired us to keep fighting, to keep pushing, and to never give up hope. Today, as Aafia's attorney stands with you in Pretoria with the hope and prophecy that 2026 will be the year Aafia is set free, inshallah. But our work is not done. Aafia remains imprisoned, far from her home, far from her loved ones. We need your continued support to bring her home. So I appeal to you, dear people of South Africa, let's keep pushing. Let's keep raising our voices. Let's keep advocating for Aafia's release. To the government of Pakistan, we say, it's time to do the right thing. Bring Aafia home. To the international community, we say, keep the pressure on. Hold those responsible accountable. And to the people of South Africa, I say, thank you. Thank you for being Aafia's voice, for being her hope, and for being with her family in this fight. Let's keep going until Aafia is free.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Respected brothers, sisters, on behalf of Salam Media, I'd like to express our appreciation, our gratitude to be able to partner with you, Abdul Qadir, Pretoria Women's United, South African Friends for Palestine, and the Pakistani Association of South Africa in partnering with us at Salam Media. Now, Mazim raised a very, very important point when he speaks about South Africa and the quality that South Africans possess. And I must say, when the story of Aafia Siddiqui had first surfaced, South Africa was about the very first country that had actually hosted her sister, Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui, anywhere in the world. And the reason for this is what started off as a news story actually mushroomed, and it grew into a movement so powerful, a movement that embraced us as South Africa, but highlighted and showcased what true humanity is all about. And this is why we at Salam Media, when we promote the idea of humanitarian journalism, this is right at the top of our agenda and our ethos. And what started off also as a news story, and I need to pay tribute to one man, and I think many of you will recall who this man is, because he broke the story for the first time. Today this man is our COO, Ponti Molatsane, but he was the producer for none other than Ibrahim Gangat, rahimahumullah. This was one man that stood out, that broke the story. And it is since then, he became one of the first media voices to talk about Aafia Siddiqui. And the stories then had just grown. Today, at Salam Media, we are still fortunate to have Ponti. We were fortunate to have Ibrahim Gangat. We are fortunate to have Shamshir Khan, who is our CEO, who embraced the story, who was then a manager, a station manager at Channel Islam International. And I recall Fawzia Siddiqui's visit to South Africa, where we traveled the length and the breadth of the country. And the emotions ran very, very high. They ranged from anger to sadness from horror to despair, from disgust to being torn apart. But it continued inspiring us as South Africans, and until today, I still get many a question over and over, what is the state as far as Aafia Siddiqui is concerned? Now, for those of us who have also been privileged to meet Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui, her visit served as a stark reminder to all of us that we cannot sit back, we cannot sit idle, and we cannot do anything, nothing. And this afternoon, once again, on behalf of Salam Media, it's an honor for me to welcome renowned human rights lawyer, and I know Muslim spoke very, very highly of Clive Stafford Smith, and my brief interaction with Clive over the last few months and also as part of this tour, I'm sure when Clive does the presentation, that will speak for itself. But I'm also certain that many of us will acknowledge the fact that Clive, when he reinforces a lot with regard to Aafia, the last 20 years of her incarceration, and it reinforces one thing, is betrayal. And when you are betrayed by your very own, and Uncle KK spoke about Musharraf, about how she was sold for a few dollars, yet you call her the daughter of the nation. Would you treat your daughter in the same manner than what Aafia Siddiqui was treated? Yet she is the daughter of the nation. So from the very beginning, and when Muazzim speaks about the cries of a helpless woman, and these cries, when they echoed through Bagram, and I recall doing a broadcast, I'm not too sure whether it was with you, Muazzim, but with somebody, and apparently I was told that these cries still haunt the person until today. That is how severe those screams were. So with Clive's visit once again to South Africa is going to serve us as a reminder. And interestingly, one of the first questions I asked Clive when we met at the airport when he arrived, and I asked him, I said, Clive, many people ask me this question, what is the true condition of Aafia Siddiqui? What is the state of her health? What is the psychological state? What is the state of her mental health? And when Clive opened his mouth, I froze. I just grew stone cold. I didn't know how to react. Because this is a woman, and we've heard the story previously, where there was a story of the brown box. And this was a cardboard box that was returned to, I think it was Aafia Siddiqui's brother, if I'm not mistaken. And this was the box that was returned from the prison. And these were the last possessions that Aafia Siddiqui, worldly possessions. There was a scarf, there were a few snacks, there was a biscuit, and I think there was a Holy Quran in this box. So her worldly possessions were returned to her. And today, as she sits in Bagram, we need to ask ourselves, what is she sitting with? She's sitting with only her body, which is left to rot for life if we don't do anything about this. And that is why I'd like to leave you with a few questions. And for all of you who have supported us in the past, we thank you, and we ask you to continue supporting us. And these are questions that we need to replay in our minds over and over again. Would you rather stand and watch the plight of Aafia Siddiqui unfolding in front of your very own eyes, and you're able to do nothing? Would you want to wait for 86 years for her prison term to be up? Are we going to be around in 2096 when Aafia Siddiqui is released? Or would you prefer holding her hand right now, support us, join us, and end this incarceration and bring Aafia Siddiqui home? Free, free Aafia, free, free Aafia.
All right. Well, look, first, let me just say this. I've never been to South Africa before. I can't believe I say that, because I've been to 72 countries. But before I came to South Africa, someone in Britain said you were very, very nice people. And it turns out to be true, so that's cool. Now, I want to tell you a little bit first about Guantanamo rather than Aafia, because I think you need to understand exactly who we as Americans put in these. I met this chap over here in 2004, and I'd been assured by Donald Rumsfeld that everyone in Guantanamo was a bad man, and that he personally, this chap here, was an evil terrorist, one of the worst terrorists in the world. And as Muslim said, there have been 780 detainees in Gitmo. And these are meant to be the very worst people. And when I brought the very first case against Guantanamo on February the 19th, 2002, and it was a matter of principle for me. I mean, you know the government's going to get some things wrong, but by and large, I thought I was going to meet these people who had been fighting on the battlefields of Afghanistan. Whether that was of any relevance to America was an interesting question. I don't see it was. But I really thought I was going to have some explaining to do. And then I meet this guy. What an unimpressive terrorist he is. I mean, he's just such a nice chap. And there was a nice story later when Muslim came home that the Chief Justice of the UK Supreme Court, Muslim was giving a talk, and Lord Bingham said, "I didn't realize there were people like you in Guantanamo." And that was because he's such a nice guy, right? And one of the things Muslim just said to me today, and I hadn't really put two and two together, is, you know, Muslim, who gets arrested every Thursday, has never had a trial. And he's not even going to be given one for his Palestine action stuff, which deeply disappoints me, you know. The last time they threw him in Belmarsh, I went to court to put my house up for his bail, and the judge went to my posh English school, right, Radley. And I was head boy and he wasn't, right? So he should have shown me some respect. But the judge wouldn't let us put bail up for Muslim then, because the judge said he thinks that he's going to commit the crime again. Now, it turned out he hadn't committed any crime, of course, and he was acquitted on all of that without even a trial. But this is just madness, right? But you have to understand why, and by the way, I wrote this book, Bad Men, and if you look closely, you'll see Muslim, his picture up there. You'll see my picture too, because they said we lawyers were bad men. You'll also see President George W. Bush, because I thought he was a bad man. And, you know, with all of this, you have to understand, how did they get it so wrong? Because we have so far, of the 780 people, we've got, 765 are no longer there. 3 more of them have been cleared. That means they've got it wrong 98.46% of the time. Because to get someone out of Guantanamo, we had to convince the top 6 intelligence agency that actually, far from being the worst of the worst in the world, Mozambique was no threat to anyone, which is frankly my experience. And you have to understand why this happened, and there's a unique thing for Aafia, but for everyone, there was this. I always thought that looked like Abu Imran, don't you? It looked just like him. There were another of my guys. Here he is, the bearded Muslim guy, and then there's a bunch of dollar bills, and then the bearded Muslim guy is behind bars. And the sort of minimum amount that we would offer people to snitch on someone would be the equivalent for someone in Pakistan of $250,000, right? So here's my question for you. This is Jess next to you, right? And Jess, I can assure you, wasn't even alive in October 2001, right? But I'm going to offer you $250,000 if you snitch on her and say Jess was in Tora Bora in Afghanistan in October 2001. Are you going to take my money? Oh, come on. You could even talk to her and you could say, Jess, I'll give you 50 grand. And she wasn't even alive, so she's going to be able to show that she didn't do it, right? Come on, you'll take the money, won't you? You will. I mean, look, you guys. Come on, you will. Surely. You'll take the money. All you have to do is say about him, he was in Tora Bora. He's worth 500,000. Yeah. All right. They already did it once, yeah. I mean, you know, one of the things, Jess is a good example because she wasn't even alive. Muslim will remember Mohammed al-Ghurani, who was 14 years old at the time that he was first in Guantanamo. I loved Mohammed. And, you know, he was just 14. And it's one of my favorite stories. And you have to understand this to understand just how stupid people are who work for the CIA. I'm sorry, Sajid is hidden from me, so I'm going to get another CIA agent. You're going to be my CIA agent. Come on, up you come. You're going to come to the front, and I want you to introduce yourself to these good people. You're a CIA agent. You didn't know that until just now. Now sit down. And what's your name, Mr. CIA agent?
My name is Salail.
Salail, now, I want you to be a CIA agent, you've got to first be American, okay? You've got to be really stupid. Can you do that? Right? And you've also got to be quite nasty. Is that all right? Okay, here we go. So when you're going to interrogate Mohammed al-Ghurani. Now, he speaks Arabic. So, Mr. CIA, do you speak Arabic? Typical American, aren't you? But that's not going to stop you. You're going to go out, and what they did with Mohammed al-Ghurani is they got, and you've got the camera on you, mate. It's not often that the CIA goes on camera, but this guy is. So you went out and you went to Yemen, and you got someone who spoke Arabic from Yemen, right? Now, as you don't know, because you're a stupid American, how many people are American here? Oh dear, it's just me again. I mean, it's always bad, isn't it? All right. So the word zalat in Yemeni Arabic means money, right? But unfortunately, Muhammad's from Saudi Arabia, where zalat means, predictably enough, salad or tomatoes, right? So you as a CIA guy, you want to know, well, Mohammed went to Pakistan from Saudi Arabia because, frankly, I hope I'm not going to insult anyone saying this, but it's true. The Saudis, when it comes to black-skinned people, make Mississippi look quite enlightened. And Mohammed couldn't go to secondary school because he was from Chad originally. And even though, you know, you are a gentleman of color yourself, you're still a CIA agent, so you're a racist bastard, right? So pardon, you have to forgive me. Every time Muslim swears, you'll notice he's quoting me. So you begin by asking Mohammed, when you went to Pakistan, what zalat did you have? Now, Mohammed thinks you're talking about tomatoes. And he recognizes you for the stupid agent you are. And he says, I didn't take any zalat to Pakistan. But you, of course, say you had to have zalat money. You couldn't go to Pakistan without that. So Mohammed says to you, no, I could get zalat anywhere I needed it in Pakistan. Now put your CIA hat on. What does that tell you?
Money.
Money.
Yeah.
You
can get money.
Right?
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about Mohammed?
He takes bribes.
No, he doesn't take bribes. He's not Pakistani. Sorry, excuse me. that was President Musharraf. Right. What does it tell you about him? You know he's a terrorist because the ISI said he was, right? So what kind of a terrorist is he? He can get money anywhere he wants it in Karachi.
Organized crime terrorist.
Well, you're getting there. I mean, you're very slow because you're a CIA agent, but no, the CIA guys said to themselves, he has to be an Al-Qaeda financier. And what's more, he's 28 years old. Now, where you got that from, I have no idea. But so they said to Mohammed, where could you get zalat in Karachi? And Mohammed listed a bunch of vegetable stalls. And you know what you did? You went and searched them all because you're a total moron, right? But, you know, this is what got Mohammed into Guantanamo Bay, age 14. And your problem for Jess, even though you snitched on her, you did in the end, let's face it, It's just, how are you going to prove that you weren't alive in 2001?
Probably a birth certificate. A birth.
Now, you're in Guantanamo. You can't get a birth certificate. What are you going to do?
I don't know. Prove my age, I guess. Prove that I wasn't alive.
You're going to say, I'm only now, it's 2001. You'll say, I haven't been born yet.
Yeah.
This is the difficulty. If you don't have a lawyer or anyone, how do you do it? The Americans said that Muhammad was 28. They said they'd looked at his teeth, and that told them, he's not very smart, this guy. And, when I got down there and saw him, I love Muhammad. He has a great sense of humor. And I talked to one of these CIA guys, and I said, why don't we get a birth certificate? And it took one call to Saudi Arabia, and 30 minutes later, we could prove that kid was 14 years old. But he still spent 5 years in Guantanamo Bay. And this is what we face for everyone, is first the bounty system, but there's a unique thing, and again, I'm afraid we're going to find out just how annoying these people are. Here, when you torture people, what do you expect them to say?
To confess to a crime.
Yeah, because?
Because they did it. They committed the crime. They're guilty, yeah.
So when you took, let me ask you what happened to Benjamin Mohammed. You took a razor blade to his genitals every 2 weeks for a year and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you do that?
To get him to confess.
Get him to say the truth,
Yeah.
is that right? I mean, who was it who told you to do that? You've got to pretend, right? But I really want to know this. Who are these savages? All right, now here's something for you. The thing with Aafia is, and I've got this from one of my clients actually who told me this. I'm not going to say who it was because he's really, really sad about having done it. One of you lot was interrogating him with a book with pictures. And in the pictures, there were almost all men, and there was one woman, right? How many, tell us all this, how many women ran Al-Qaeda?
0.
Well, you didn't
None.
think that when you were doing this, did you?
No, I didn't.
You've learned something in the last 25 years. It's true, there are no women. It's basically fundamentally chauvinist organization. Don't aspire to being the head of Al-Qaeda, ladies. It ain't going to happen. So now pretend, for example, you're trying to analyze these terrorists, and you're going to show them the pictures of all these men and a woman, and you're going to torture them, because that's what you do. Who are they going to identify as the evil terrorist?
The woman.
The woman. Why?
She stands out.
She stands out.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
Because she's most unlikely to.
Yeah, but you, on the other hand, as a CIA agent, still believe it.
Yeah, still believe.
This is what happened to Aafia. One of the people I represented was shown this picture book, and he was shown a picture book of all these men who he didn't know who they were, and this woman, she didn't know who she was. And he decided that he was going to make up a story about Aafia Siddiqui because no one would believe it. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be true, because as we've learned so overtly, they're very stupid. So Aafia ends up in trouble, and there's a much bigger story to this, and this will all come to light very soon, because we filed with the US attorneys in New York 349 pages that details everything that went on. And if you don't mind telling your mates back in Pakistan, it's going to come out through the ISI agents who have given me sworn declarations. I keep telling the Pakistan government, just help us get this woman out before I really, really tell the world about what the ISI did. I know you're not a member of the ISI, but send them the message for me if you would. Now, this is what happened with Aafia, and I just want to tell you the whole story. Many of you know quite a lot of it. She was, in 2003, she was just getting divorced from her worthless husband, Amjad Khan, right? Now, I'm going to tell you one story about Amjad Khan that sums this guy up. But he made up a bunch of stories about his wife, the mother of his 3 children, being a terrorist. When the 3 kids were abducted, well, let me ask you, which of you guys have got 3 kids? Who's got 3 kids? Okay, 3 kids. Your 3 kids have been abducted. What are you going to do about it?
Well, I'll raise hell. I'll raise hell to find him. Yes.
Okay. Would you alternatively say, well, I'm really not bothered. I'll just go marry another woman, have another girl, and call her Mariam to just replace the Mariam they took? It's stunning, isn't it? I mean, I've got one boy, Wilf, 17. If someone kidnaps my boy, I'm going to go to the end of the earth to get him out. This guy just married another woman and had another girl and called her Mariam. I mean, unbelievable, but there's much worse than that. So they were going to the airport. She had the good sense to be in divorce proceedings against him, and she had to be a single mother of 3 children. And so she was taking her little child. This is Suleiman, 6 months. This is Mariam, age 4, and this is Ahmed, age 6. And importantly, we'll get to it, Mariam and Ahmed were both US citizens. They were born in Boston, and she's going to Islamabad to get a job in education to support her family, and it's a good job. And it's March the 30th, 2003. She's got the kids along. Now, what were they talking about? Remember, you're a CIA agent. You assume she's talking to her 3 kids about nuclear bombs?
Yeah, nuclear bombs and
Nuclear bombs. Shooting satellites down, maybe?
bombing America.
Bombing America. That's what they thought they'd be talking about. What they were really talking about was Thomas the Tank Engine. Because Ahmed was really upset they were taking a plane to Islamabad because Ahmed loved Thomas the Tank Engine, the book about the train with a face on the front, and he wanted to go to Islamabad by train. And they're having this, I'm just here to make his job really hard, poor chap, he has to keep moving this camera. Most civilized people just stand at the podium. So they're going there, and this is when the CIA, working with the ISI, abducts them. And the first thing they did was they dragged Mariam, age 4, out of the car, screaming, as she would be, and they put her in a separate car all by herself, age 4. That's the last anyone saw of her for 7 years. Now, Mariam was taken 1,000 kilometers north from Karachi to a war zone by the CIA. They called her Fatima, and they put her into a white Christian American CIA family. Would you please explain to these good people why you thought it was such a good idea to put this US citizen in a white Christian American family?
Because Islam is not appreciated in the north, and
No, spit out the truth.
you're most likely to go to...
I'm forcing you to say something blasphemous. I'll say it. Because Americans, and you've got to understand the bad guys when you're dealing with them, right? And here, the CIA, the bad guys, without a doubt. The Americans honestly think everyone in this room wants to be American. Put your hand up if you want to be American. He's not. You know, it is fascinating. There was a time when a lot of you would have put your hand up when people thought, wow, it's a great country, everyone makes lots of money and all that stuff. But we have done so much bad stuff in the last 25 years, for which, by the way, I personally, as the only American in the room, I apologize. Muslim tells me not to do that, but I feel a sort of duty to do it because we've done terrible things. They took her there because they thought that her only hope for making it in life was to be a Christian American. Otherwise, you can't go to heaven, apparently. Who agrees with that you can't go to heaven unless you're a Christian American? It's just totally wacko, but that's what those people really think. Now, the reason we can prove all this is this chap. And Muslim and I were in, did you come? You came to that thing with him? Yeah. So we were having tea with this chap in Kabul about 3 months ago. And notwithstanding the fact that I'm not a huge Hamid Karzai fan, he is a key witness because you know what he said to some of our colleagues? He said that when Fawzia had gone and told him in Islamabad about the tragedy of what had happened, he went back to Kabul, told the Americans, you got to give this little girl back. The Americans lied and said they didn't have her. He kept on at him, and then finally they said they did have her, and Karzai couldn't have her. And he then said that he was going to send the Afghan military around to get her, which, you know, whether that's true or not, it's kind of cool. And so he got Mariam back, and he's a witness who's going to come out in court in just a few days to what happened to Mariam. But you've got to remember the CIA still lies about all this stuff. The second kid, I find this even more difficult, and we're going to ask the CIA here to explain this. Your job is to protect Americans, right? Ahmed's an American citizen, age 6. Why did you take him 1,000 kilometers to Kabul and put him in prison, age 6, and tell him his name's Ihsan Ali and you'd kill him if he ever said it wasn't? Why'd you do that?
To radicalize him.
Oh, you wanted to radicalize him, did you? Oh my God, you're stupider than I thought. Anyway, you know, the Mariam one I can understand because I'm capable of understanding insanity, but I just don't get this one. And the only reason that Ahmed is home is because of this woman. This is Fawzia Siddiqui. You heard from her. Muslim told you about her. You are now going to give her a round of applause. Come on. If you are ever in trouble, you want that woman as your sister. She has spent the last 22 years trying to get these kids back, trying to help Aafia. She's had bodies dropped outside her door by the ISI. By the way, I'm sorry, everyone has to do this. When I say the letters ISI, you have to hiss. Let's practice. ISI. Yeah, you got to do that. I'm sorry, these people are messing up your country. I almost used a really bad word there. I do apologize. Anyway, they are, and it's awful. And the idea that this woman who's fighting for her sister and her niece and nephew, that they should drop dead bodies, they should mail bullets to her, that they've abducted her and put a hood over her head twice while I've been doing these cases. It's just disgusting. If you want to do that, do it to me. Because you know what? I'm an OPWM. You know what that stands for, right? No, you don't. Stop nodding. You don't know what it stands for. I'm going to tell you, because I made it up. It means old privileged white male. And they can try doing it to me. I don't really care. But, you know, they could, because they're mad. But I wish they'd stop doing it to Fawzia. Now, the third one, which is really the kicker here, is that according to the only witness who's ever said anything on this, when the CIA and the ISI said it, come on, ISI says it, when they were abducting this whole family, they tried to grab this little infant from her hands, and they broke the child out of her hands, and allegedly the kid fell on his head, and that killed him. Now, the only witness to that is Ahmed, who was 6 years old and deeply, deeply traumatized himself. He was in the middle of a kidnapping, and he didn't say it until 5 years later. So I'm very skeptical about that. But maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I kind of think there's a 50-50 chance that this child is still alive and has been forcibly adopted into a white Christian American family by this chap here. Now, here's a question you've got to answer. And you've got to answer because I'm American too, and I'm going to torture you if you don't. I'm sorry, I don't mean that. But you have to choose one or the other. If you've got a child, and the child's been gone for 23 years and you don't know where that child is, put yourself in Aafia's position and answer me this question. Would you rather have the sense of closure of knowing that your child died in 2003, knowing where the child's buried and all of that? Or would you rather, after 23 years, cling to the faint hope that your child is still alive? Well, everyone can have their own opinion, and this is one that divides audiences. Who would want some sense of catharsis or closure knowing that child was dead and knowing where the child was buried? So we got a few votes on that. And you remember, I'm looking at you. If you don't vote either way, I just come and, sorry, I don't slap you about that. That's for him. Who would want to have a faint hope that your child is still alive? Yeah. Now, I think it's possible. And one of the things that is absolutely obligatory to us is that we help work this out for Aafia. And I have a plan for it, and it's this. You know, Mosem and I, when we were in Afghanistan last time, we were talking to some of the Taliban guys about a shocking statistic that's published, which is that when we as Americans left Afghanistan in 2022, we took with us 1,450 Afghan children to America illegally to adopt into American families, right? How do you feel about that? Not you, you're a vicious, mean character. How do you feel?
Me also. Not me also.
Sorry?
Not me also.
Oh, not you. Oh, right, we'll get one. Look, I should say this at the beginning. I'm proud of you men over here because men are useless, right? We know that. Our gender is useless. Women do all human rights. 85% of my human rights students are women. So these guys are much, much better at it. But I'm proud there's so many of you. And so I'm just saying this to make you feel very guilty. Make sure you do your job, right? Okay. So what was my question to him? How do you feel about us kidnapping 1,450 Afghan children?
I wouldn't agree with that at all. It's a horrid thing to do.
So what are we going to do about it?
Put them to justice. Get
No. What are we going to do? What, we're going to go kidnap 1,400 of their children? But how are you going to do that, right? Do you know what? But I'm going to tell you why you can't do that. Because your per capita national income here for each South African is 29,000 rands a year, which is about $1,750. You need a lot of money. Do you know, I went to Columbia Law School, and you know how much my friends at Columbia Law School, who are corporate lawyers today, charge you per hour? How much?
a couple of $10,000 maybe.
Good Lord, it's not quite that bad, but it is $2,000 an hour. And so the sad truth about all of this is you can't do it. You know, we have to do it. And that means that, you know, my job when Mosem was in Guantanamo Bay was to go to places like Yemen and talk to these Yemenis who would get $300 a year and say, look, I'm really sorry we did that. We're going to set it right. Because that's the only way we can do it. And so it's our duty to do that. And it's our duty to do that for Aafia too. And this is what we're going to do. And I'd like your help on this, is we've done AI reconstructions of the little boy, Suleiman. You saw him as a baby, but that would be him when he was about 3 or 4. And then we've gradually projected it using his parents' pictures and his brother and sister's picture. About 10, that's him when he's 18, that's him today. So we need to conduct a program across the United States where we put those pictures out there, and probably there's a little Pakistani-looking guy who doesn't know who his birth parents are. And if he comes forward, we'll DNA test him, and we'll see if it's true. And at the very least, we'll also identify a bunch of the Afghan kids who got abducted and reunite them with their family if they want to. That's up to them. Now, that's what happened to the kids. In the meantime, the Americans deny, of course, 20 years later, what Mosem told you, which is they took her to Bagram Air Force Base and they tortured her, right? Now, I have a question for our CIA agent. In torturing her there, you pretended to torture her children in front of her. She was tied to a chair. She's told me all of this in person. She was tied to a chair, and there's a one-way mirror, and behind the one-way mirror, the Americans, him, are torturing children who they say are her children. Why would you do that?
To push her to confess.
Well, she confessed to everything, obviously, when you did that. So why do you keep on doing it?
Maybe incriminate herself.
She's already done that for 3 weeks, so why you keep doing it? See, this is your problem. Imagine you're Aafia. First, how does that impact you? But more importantly, perhaps, how are you going to stop them doing it?
I don't know.
I think that's because they want to keep her there, and there's no way. They're trying to put fear in for anybody not to get her to be free. So they keep on doing what they're doing repeatedly.
You're Aafia. What are you going to do to stop these maniacs from abusing these children?
Try and do something, but
You do what, sorry? No, you've
I'm a
already
terrorist.
admitted everything. You've
Okay.
admitted that. You've done that for 3 weeks. They're still abusing the children. What are you going to do now? This is really problematic. I talked to Aafia about that, and she told me. She said, I pretended to them that I didn't care. The only thing this poor woman could do is pretend she didn't care about them torturing her children. She thought that was the only way to stop them from doing it. Can you imagine being in that position? It's really shocking. So moving right on, Mozam and I found this chap. This is Salim Kuche, who is the first person we found who had seen her in Bagram. Mozam and I both went to this room where we filmed it. This was the room, the isolation unit where Aafia was tortured. It didn't look like, this is a guy called Tapu, who was one of the people who saw her there. And these were dog kennels that were built in this room. And Aafia was in those rooms for quite a long time. Then she was taken to what we call the discotheque. And here's a question for you. The discotheque is a place where we played loud music. This is a terrible question. I'm going to give you a choice of torture. Either you accept that we're going to take a razor blade to your genitalia, or we're going to play loud music at you for a month. Which would you take? Loud music. She's wrong, you know. The only person who can tell you that as an expert is Binyam Mohammed, my client. He had both of those, and he said, look, physical torture, you know when it's going to end, you know when it's going to begin, and so forth. Psychological torture, you begin to lose your sanity. And he said the proper question is this: would you rather I blinded you in your left eye, or I drove you insane? Which would you choose? You see, blinded, that's it. Now, it's incredible that we're having this conversation in the 21st century, isn't it? But that's the sort of thing we were doing. We put Aafia in the discotheque for a long time, and it had predictable results. All of this time, what we were doing as Americans was forcing her to write incriminating stuff. And here's the thing, right? I'm sorry, Mr. CIA agent, how do you shoot down a satellite?
You can shoot it down by using lasers.
Now, when Aafia says she can shoot down a satellite using lasers, what do you think?
I think she can do it.
Yeah. See, this is really what happened. If you look very carefully here, this was an exhibit brought up in New York, and that there is Aafia's handwriting telling you how to shoot down a satellite using lasers. And the Americans really thought she could do that. But if you turn the page, before the page, Can We Cure Aging, which, by the way, we can't, it's how to shoot down satellites on the page before. And she's just written out, copied out what's on the page before. And the crucial thing about this is I had my students look it up, and it's from Discover magazine in December 2007. And Aafia was arrested later. We'll get to what happened in 2008 in July. And Discover magazine was only published in paper in the United States. So Aafia couldn't have found a copy of Discover magazine in Afghanistan herself. So where did it come from? What do you reckon? Sorry?
An American?
Well, of course it came from an American, and you know exactly where it came from. In Bagram Air Force Base, we did a little looking, and sure enough, MWR, the Morale, Welfare and Recreation Department of Bagram Air Force, had that magazine. So it came from the CIA agents, just like Aafia told us. And, you know, there were so many of these things. The next one, was The Accidental Terrorist. That came from Popular Science magazine, published in January 2008, only in America, obviously came from the CIA in Bagram Air Force Base. So all the stuff that this guy over here thought showed that she's an evil terrorist actually proves that she's telling the truth, that she was forced to write this stuff out when she was being tortured in Bagram. And it goes on and on. The next thing is this, which is directly from Homemade Semtex. Do any of you have a copy of Homemade Semtex? If you do, please don't put your hand up. As a CIA, I'll come and arrest you. I, as an OPWM, I've got a copy, and they can try and arrest me if they want. But that came from the Americans as well, right? And we know that because she couldn't possibly have had a hard paper copy of Homemade Semtex in the middle of Afghanistan. So this was the problem. Now, there comes a time, even though you are amazingly stupid, sir, that you figured out that she wasn't actually a terrorist, right? What are you going to do?
Try and incriminate her further.
No, you've been doing that. But, you know, it's just all rubbish. So what are you going to do now?
Fabricate lies.
You've been doing that for 5 years. The CIA, actually, in the end, just wanted to get rid of people. You know, when we proved that Mozambique was just no more a terrorist than, you know, my grandmother. She was quite a wicked woman, my grandmother. I loved her dearly, but she wasn't a terrorist. So they would just get rid of you and send you home, right? Because they don't care. We don't care. We're Americans. We have no idea where South Africa is. So we just let people go. The problem for everyone in 2008, when the CIA wanted to get rid of her, was this, that Fawzia Siddiqui over here had a 1 million-person march in Karachi for her sister Aafia. Aafia was by now the most famous woman in Pakistan. Now, and remember, this is July 2008, Pervez Musharraf is teetering on the end of his dictatorship. If Aafia had shown up with her children and the story came out about what he did, then he would have been out of office. That would have been the end of it. So the ISI, thank you. The ISI came up with what we call a disposal operation. And a disposal operation is to get rid of her. And what they did was they dressed up, and I want you to tell us why you did this. You gave her son, Ahmed, who she didn't know was her son, right? Because he's still saying he's Ihsan Ali. He's too afraid to say that he's actually Ahmed. But they dressed him up, you dressed him up, in a heavy jacket in the middle of summer in Afghanistan with 4 big pockets full of fruit. Why'd you do that?
To make you seem like he's carrying weapons.
Yeah, he's a suicide bomber, right? And they put Aafia in a full chador where you couldn't see what she had on. And then they called in a suicide report saying there was going to be a suicide bomber outside a mosque in Ghazni. And Ghazni is right there, about 150K southwest of Kabul. And Morzim and I have been there. We actually spent the most uncomfortable night. Well, is it not true? That place was worse than my private school. It was just horrendous. There's a picture I got of me and Morzim. We were so cold. It was so miserable. It was horrible. But the Ghazni people are very nice. And they took, the ISI sent her on a bus with her son to Ghazni with the promise that if she sat outside a mosque, they would deliver her daughter, Mariam, and then she could buzz off back to Pakistan and live happily ever after. Now, that was never going to happen. What happened, though, is that they went there and they sat outside this mosque, the Khalid bin Walid Mosque. Unfortunately, It was the wrong mosque. She was meant to be outside the Al-Jihad mosque, and she sat there for 7 hours. And when Muazzam and I first went there, everyone said, oh, no one will talk to you. We got 6 witnesses in 3 hours, didn't we? Because everyone saw her out there, and she couldn't talk to them, but she spoke Urdu and English, and they spoke Farsi. And so she was sitting there for hours. It was an all-male mosque. No one wanted to bother her, but they didn't know what she was doing there. And then, who should come down from his... There's a guy who was doing his tailoring work across the street. This chap, Mohammed Ajmal Mohammadi, who I think I can speak for Muslim, is a great friend of ours and a real hero of mine. He was a tailor across the street from where the mosque was, and he saw this woman out there all day, and he saw that no one could talk to her. He had done tailoring in Pakistan, so he could speak Urdu. And he went out there, and he talks to her, and he says, you know, it's a war zone, it's getting dark, it's dangerous, my mum lives around the corner, why don't you stay the night there? She says, no, 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 I'm waiting for them to deliver my daughter. And at that moment, finally, the Afghan National Police show up 7 hours late with their AK-47s. Now, you've had training in what to do with suicide bombers, right? Do you go up to them and say, hi, ma'am, are you a suicide bomber? What do you do?
Shoot on sight.
Shoot on sight. The Americans said there were 2 police officers who came there. Actually, there were 42, and they all had AK-47s, and they ringed her at 100 feet, which is the standard thing, and they were just going to shoot her. And Mohammadi said, no, she's not a suicide bomber. And he stood in front of her and saved her life, and that's why that man is one of my great heroes. Just as an aside, because it amused me, and it shows just how stupid you are, sir. What happened is we're going to have to give him a round of applause at the end, because he's putting up with a lot of bad stuff from me. But, you know, I think it's safe to say his musical tastes are pretty dreadful, except for the one. I did like the Black President song. Yeah. Anyway, they ring, one of them sneaks around behind Aafia to see if she's got a suicide vest on, pulls her chador off to take a look, and she hasn't got a suicide vest. And Mohammadi was so offended as a conservative Afghan male by this that he quit tailoring on the spot and went and joined the Mujahideen, which I think just shows how stupid we are as Americans, that we just create enemies every time we have the opportunity. So they don't kill her. Instead, they take her to the Afghan National Police headquarters. She's held there overnight. Can show up the next day. And again, I've got a question for you, sir. To begin with, you went in to try to talk to her, but the Afghans wouldn't let you in. Twice they refused to let you in. What did you do?
Force myself in.
Bribe. No. Bribe, thank goodness. You know, I've got this American intelligence agent who signed an affidavit saying some things I'm not certain he should say, really, but he did anyhow. And one of the things he told me was that when he was working in Afghanistan, every Friday, his people would give him $30,000 in cash to bribe the Afghans to get the job done. And that's what they did in this case. And this is where the stories differ, but I can tell you who's telling the truth. It's definitely Aafia. She says, now here's a question, I'm sorry. Jess, I know you don't own a gun, but where's the safety catch on an M4 machine gun?
I have no idea.
Do they teach kids nothing in school in this country? Do you not know where the safety catch is? You people are totally useless, you really are. You couldn't defend yourself against invasion any moment. Anyway, gosh, they're bad Muslim, aren't they? I mean, a good terrorist like you, you'd know exactly where it was, wouldn't you? And you could just shoot her. What, you mean where you rammed down the... Yes, that's right. That's right. You were a terrorist in 1670, obviously. Back in the day. All right. So anyway, according to Aafia, she's in this room that Muazzam and I have been to, and it's not as big. It's a bit smaller than this area. And there was a curtain across the middle, and she's behind the curtain, and she hears American voices coming into the room. And she told me that she heard the voices. She thought, oh my goodness, they're going to take me back for more torture. And then she peeked around the curtain, and an American soldier said, she's on the loose, bam, bam, and shot her in the stomach, right? That's her version of events, which happens to be the truth, demonstrably. But the Americans obviously worked out, sorry, here's the thing, you've just shot an innocent, so you can't just look at your phone. I know you do that. You've just shot an innocent woman, and you've discovered she had no gun. What are you going to do?
She shot first.
Well, oh yeah, well you're quite good actually as a CIA agent. They said that they all came into the room, they did what you always do in a war zone, you put your machine gun on the ground, and that she reached under the curtain, picked it up, started shooting at them, flipped off the safety catch, and they shot her in self-defense. Now there's a small problem for their story, which is there were no M4 casings, no M4 bullets, no gunshot residue on Aafia. But slightly more important than everything else, there were 2 bullet holes that were in this wall here that the Americans said were the bullet holes from the M4 machine gun. There was a video from earlier that day taken in that same room, and the 2 holes were already there. So that, I think the legal term for what the Americans argued was what?
Obstruction.
No, bullshit. That's what it was. You know, but the trouble was that she had some hopeless lawyers, she had no witnesses for the defense, and so she gets taken to be tried 9/10 of a mile from ground zero in New York City. They take her halfway around the world, put her on trial within sight of 9/11, and they expect to get a fair trial. And she gets convicted, and she gets 86 years in prison. I made my poor students go through every single attempted murder case in federal history in America, and it's the second longest sentence ever given to someone in the last 41 years since we had that law. It's just shocking. And she's not going to be eligible for parole until 2086. So that's where she is. And then it gets worse. The way I got roped into this was by Fauzia, because she's a very persuasive person. I was in Karachi, and I just got 3 Pakistanis out of Guantanamo, Saifullah Paracha and the Rabbani brothers. And Fauzia caught me at a weak moment. I thought, oh, I must have lots of time. Now I don't have these 3 clients. So she got me to go see Aafia. I was going to Texas, and she got me to go see Aafia in Texas in the prison. And Aafia told me in FMC Carswell, in that first visit I had with her, that she'd been repeatedly raped in prison, that she'd been sexually assaulted in prison. She hadn't been allowed to see an imam the whole time she'd been in prison. She couldn't get access to medical care in prison. And you know, I'm not sure whether you believe everything someone tells you, but I looked into it. And FMC Carswell has the highest sexual assault rate of any prison in the world. And that's because this is something I find utterly unfathomable, that we have a women's prison with male guards. Who here wants to be a prison guard? I know you do. Put your hand up. Do you want to be a prison guard because you're a sociopathic bastard?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. You know, this is the problem. It's not true of everyone. Obviously, I hope we have some decent guards, but most people who want to have that power over another human being are not sensitive, cuddly people. And so there have been 12 guards, including the chief Christian minister, who have been convicted of rape in that prison. And Aafia's in that prison being mistreated every single day. She's been in isolation for longer than any other female prisoner in the federal system in America, longer than every woman who's on death row in America. She's been in there longer all by herself. She's been treated worse than everyone else. And it's actually, you know, you're probably sitting there saying, oh, this is all some conspiracy theory. No, it's not. It's that they think that everything she says about her children being abducted, about her being in Bagram, is just nonsense. The CIA says it didn't happen, so it couldn't have happened. So they think she's just making up this big story as a political statement against America, whereas we now know it's all true. And that's why they have viewed her as an incorrigible terrorist for the whole of this time. And they're treating her horribly today. So the issue really here is this. I'm giving you the opportunity not to go directly to hell. This is just my threat. I like doing that to people who believe in that stuff. We got to work for her, right? My mum makes me do it. My mum's dead, bless her. But, you know, if there is a heaven, she's in it, and she's going to strike me dead if I don't represent people under these circumstances. We need your help. Fauzia runs the Aafia movement. I'm not asking to be paid. I don't. I never do. I've only ever been paid once in my entire career. That's when my friend Ruth paid me 2 six-packs of beer to get her off some traffic tickets. But my job, I see it as making up for what my country's done. Sorry?
Who is it?
So look, the problem is this. I mean, Muazzam, you know, he won't feel great about this, but actually his was a jaunt in the park compared to Aafia. And the great thing about Muazzam is he was not given any semblance of a trial. And we have this mythology that if you have a trial, then we've given you a fair shake, right? Now, if Aafia was in Guantanamo Bay, we'd have her out tomorrow, because it would be a political issue purely. But because she's been given what we consider a fair trial and given 86 years, that's nothing on American standards. Americans believe in reincarnation, apparently. They'll give you 17 life sentences consecutively. We're incredibly harsh. Your country's getting worse, and we need to do something about that. So it's not some grand conspiracy. It's that they think she got a fair trial, and they think she got the sentence that is meant to be given. Now, I've represented 400 people facing the death penalty where they think that the death penalty is a cool thing to do to people. I beg to differ. But they really do believe that. And our job is to change it. And it takes a lot of work, right? And, you know, I've done 4,000 hours, a little over 4,000 hours on Aafia's case in the last 3 years. And it's a huge amount of work. Muazzam and I have been to Afghanistan 5 times. It's not easy. You know, I talk a bit about African time because no one shows up on time here, but it's nothing like Afghanistan time. Getting things done in Afghanistan, I mean, they're lovely people, don't get me wrong, but getting stuff done takes a lot of work. And so it's an enormous job to do this. Now, I don't ask to be paid. I don't need it. I'm an old privileged white male, but Fauzia needs the help for the Aafia movement. We do need to pay expenses for things. We do need to pay expenses for experts, and we have a couple of young women who go visit Aafia every 2 weeks, and that's great, you know. Without that, I can't go there all the time. I go about 3 or 4 times a year, but we need someone to go see her all the time. So there's lots of expenses, and you need to help Fauzia out on that. And, you know, my office has some expenses, but whatever, we can deal with that. Then, how many of you are doctors or medical professionals, nurses, or know a doctor? Yeah, you know a doctor. You go see him all the time. We need doctors to support us in court in New York saying, you know, this woman hasn't been allowed to see a doctor for ages. If she ever did see a doctor, do you have this, ma'am, when you go see a doctor, they make you go through a strip search? No, amazing. I don't know what it is about South African doctors that they don't torture you. So we need help from medical professionals. If you just scan that QR code, that does it for you. We need help from imams or legal scholars, because Omar Suleiman, who knows Omar Suleiman, the imam? What do you think of Omar? He's cool, right? He's really cool. Have you ever met him? I have many times, and he's one of the few human beings who I look up to metaphorically and physically, because he's 6'7". And he's cool, and he's a lovely guy, and he lives in Dallas-Fort Worth, and he's offered to go see Aafia every week or 2, and they won't let him in. He's just one of the great legal scholars of the world in Islam, and they won't let him in. So we need imams to say this is just not on. There's a First Amendment in the US. We also, put your hand up if you think there's nothing you can do to help, so I can come and slap you. Everyone can do something. And one thing you can do if you want to, and this is really important, and this is so little, but it's still important, is you can write letters to Aafia. And I have a little email, lettersforaafia@gmail.com, which comes to me. I take what you write, I take out all the things you write about killing Americans, because we don't want to say that, and I attach them to legal letters from me to Aafia, so they go in legal mail, they can't stop it. And Aafia gets 100 pages of this a month. And you know, when she's being abused in that prison, she's told me that she takes your letters and reads them out. And your letters are about saying you're inspired by her, that you don't write to her about how you pity her, you feel sorry for her. She don't want to hear that stuff. It's about how you inspire her. And then when she reads that, that gives her a protection against these people. It's a limited protection, but it's a good one. And I'm so happy about that. And then, you know, I'm going to leave it with this, because this is the Salam Media bank account. And you can send them cash, and they'll send it to Fauzia. So there we are. Anything you want to say, heckle? We need to just thank the CIA for breaking cover over here and agreeing to talk to us and illustrating for us just how stupid they are. But if you have any questions or anything, I know you've been very patient. I really appreciate it. It's 4:30. I've gone on much too long, but Mosem will tell you I do that all the time. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Clive, for sharing your insight. Yeah, Maulana Arafat, where are you? Maybe you can mention a few words about the fundraising.
Brother Clive, thank you so much. May the all
I'm really disappointed that he's wearing white, because when I met this guy, he was in the airport with me. He was wearing this really flashy blue thing. He had a matching suitcase. I was very jealous, because I don't have a matching suitcase that's made out of jeans.
Can I be your bodyguard the next time you come to South Africa? Can I be your bodyguard?
In South Africa? No, in Texas. I don't need you in South Africa, mate.
Respected mothers and fathers and sisters, brothers, Jazakumullah khair for coming and attending this program of Salam Media. I think now is the time that this is our sister. We're doing this for Aafia, we're doing this for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're asking all our mummies, all our brothers here, inshallah, whatever you have for the pleasure of Aafia, inshallah, we want you to contribute, inshallah. How Haji Abdul Qadir say, how we're going to dig deep into our pockets. So come, inshallah. I want all our mothers and sisters, whether it is 500 rand for the pleasure of Aafia, let's do it. Inshallah, let's all of us say Ameen. Inshallah, one day Aafia will come and stay here in Pretoria. Say Ameen, inshallah. Ameen, inshallah. So come, I want all our brothers, the organization who was here as well, inshallah. Let's contribute. Our fundraising is, I think, 1 million rand. So, inshallah, we're trying to get there for Aafia, inshallah. So, let's try and do it. I was seeing a very beautiful clip. Sister Aafia, Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, she dreamed of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in the dream, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to her. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked her, "Oh, Aafia, are you okay?" So Aafia returned and she said, "Oh, Nabi of Allah, 23 years I'm in prison. How can I be okay? 23 years. Nabi Sallam says, oh, Aafia, it's not me. It's your people. What are we doing, brothers and sisters? Tomorrow it could be one of our kids, one of our sisters. Come, I want everybody here, mashallah. We've got, yes.
I had a great idea today.
Yeah.
Apropos of South Africa. You had some chap who's president of your country. So I think if we could just take Aafia, get her out of prison, she's just about done enough time, and then you can make her president of Pakistan and solve the whole problem.
Ameen, inshallah. There's a booklet, a Quran marker here. It says here, I am Aafia. Dr. Aafia, she's a Hafidh al-Quran. She's a scholar of Deen as well. And she finds peace in reading the Quran. She finds peace in reading the Kalam of Allah. So I was asking all the sisters, inshallah, brothers, minimum 100 rand. Of course, you don't need to give 100, you can give 500, 200. But minimum, take this, put it in your Quran. Ramadan is around the corner. Every time you read it, when you take it out, you think of Aafia, you make dua for her, inshallah. Hajj Abdul Qadir, over to you, inshallah. So come, inshallah. I want all our mummies, sisters. We do have the card machine. If anybody wants to tap the, inshallah. Any contribution of lillah, any contribution of zakat, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah. Inshallah, what we'll try and do is, let's coordinate this. The account is there, but we'll channel it via Salam Media. So ladies and the Pakistani Association and us as well, inshallah, let's talk about it, let's network, and let's try and raise a substantial amount, inshallah, towards this particular cause. It's a great cause, believe you me. You know, it's heartbreaking. These people are intent in totally breaking her and destroying her. We mustn't allow that. Really, we mustn't allow that. And Clive, Muazzam, hats off to you guys. Unfortunately, I don't wear a hat, but hats off to you guys. Really, really. And keep going, keep strong, and you guys are in our prayers. Silalo, you're going to do the vote of thanks, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salailo Makudir. I'm not a stupid CIA operative, I promise. I'm a journalist and an anchor at Salam Media, and I would like to extend our sincere thanks to all of our partners, everyone that made the hashtag Bring Aafia Home campaign a possibility. It was a pleasure. I can't name all of you, but I think the Pretoria Women's United was at the forefront, and we hope that we'll work again in the near future. There are more campaigns like this that we'll be doing, and we count on each and every one of you that made time to be here today to assist us. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.